Oh, morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean. Bugsy's over my shoulder. This is your Saturday morning update. It's game day eve. Hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love, with those that you love doing them with. Please do me a favour, guys. Smash the like button for me on this transfer news, views and clues update. If you like the video, really important to help me out, help the channel out. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and even if you have, double check that you still are. Hashtag shenanigans. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. And there's two transfer news, views and clues updates. One of them, for all the huff and puff of the transfer mill, I just don't particularly buy it. And that's DUSAN Vlahovic. Apparently Tottenham have greenlit a deal worth £68.5 million for Juventus number 9, DUSAN Vlahovic. Reports are all over Italian media, Italian press coverage saying he's up for it. We'll pay him £275,000 a week, which would almost double his current salary over in Juve. And look, it's a massive name. It would certainly be an attempt at a replacement for Harry Kane. I personally think the player was at his best when he was at Fiorentina. I don't think we've seen the best of him at Juventus, even though he's played and done pretty well thus far this season. Juventus doing good things at the moment. I don't know whether he would necessarily want to come though, despite the reports saying he does. I'm just not sure whether he would want to leave a title charge in Italy. You know, I think his career's been a little bit stop-starty. He's been blighted with a few injuries over the last couple of years, and he didn't really hit the ground running like everybody else, was expecting him to. But in terms of talent, he's a prodigious talent. I think he's absolutely fantastic. He's tall, he's strong, he's powerful, he's a target man. I think he'll suit the Premier League. I think he could suit Ange very much so. It's a lot of money, and it's, for me though, like I say, I just feel like there's a lot of rumours about it, but I'm just not entirely sure he would want to give up what he's currently got going on over there. Also, £68.5 million. Look, if the rumours are to be believed, that this is a true story and it's not made up gunk, then you also have to factor in the likely budgets that we have available for us this January. And as I've been saying for quite a while on this channel, when you crunch the numbers from the last couple of accounts and you look at the wage to turnover ratio, which is about 50%, and you look at the amount of money we've spent net for the last 6 or 7 years, and you put that up against on an average spend relative to revenue, you're getting to that point where you're at about 75 to 80%, which is, give or take, not far away from what you should be maxed out at spending with your FFP limitations. Once again, I know you can push money around via amortization, and that's where you have to get into the weeds a little bit with the accounts and look at the short-term player trading liabilities versus the long-term player trading liabilities. And once you've done all that, for me, I came to a conclusion that there wasn't going to be huge amounts of money available in January. I could be wrong, but I would expect there to be about, if there was money available, about £70 million. And so if DUSAN Vlahovic is going to cost £68.5 million, that doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for anybody else. And Tottenham need a striker for sure. You could also make the argument that Tottenham need a winger, and Tottenham also need a centre-back. And then, of course, if Tottenham are going to be going into the midfield market, pending decisions made around Højbjerg's future and Gio Lo Celso's future, then obviously there'd need to be money available for that as well. So how do you... Oh, Bugsy's chasing after a deer. Don't know if you can see that. I'm not sure if you can see that in the background. You're never going to get there, Bugsy. You're never going to get there. look, unfortunately, I was saying this last night with Dave on our multi-stream. If you haven't seen it, please check it out and subscribe to both channels. Shout out to Dave. We were having a conversation about, why is it that, we can't seem to get the money together to really go for it. Obviously, I think it's a little bit of 2 or 3 different columns, right? The first column would be that we are a club that tries to be sustainable and does everything within the club's means, where, both ends meet, which is something which is frustrating to a lot of fans. But for me personally, my personal view on it is I'm okay with a football club not having to extend credit facilities in order to stay competitive. I just don't think that's the way it should be done. And I don't have a lot of respect for clubs who have forged their success by running a credit card lifestyle. I was saying on the stream last night, I used to really respect Arsenal, how they had all the success that they had under the Arsene Wenger era by doing it organically. But these days, Arsenal now are 600 million in the hole over the last 2 years, living beyond their means, taking lines of credit from their owners, and it still hasn't, as of yet, yielded any relative success, although they're looking more and more likely to find some. But I think you now put them in the bucket, the same sort of bucket, maybe not as deep a bucket, but a similar sort of bucket to the likes of Chelsea and Manchester City, that need sugar daddy models to achieve what they want to achieve. The last big club, I think, that still essentially manages their expectations financially is Liverpool. So if and when Tottenham finally do get a trophy, it will taste so much sweeter to me doing it the way we're doing it. But in any event, that is one of the reasons why there's not a lot of money. And the other obvious reason is because we've spent so much money in the past 4 or 5 years on players that we just can't sell, that have been, inadequate, inappropriate for our measures, for our ambitions, and the inability to offload those and recover some of the player trading receivables eventuates with a situation where you're still licking your wounds half a decade later. And you just hope now that the club are going to get more of the decisions right than they are wrong. And I think that Dusan Vlahovic is a player that will, close the gap a little bit on what we're missing at the top end of the pitch. But like I say, if you do go down that path, you're probably absorbing most of the budget. Now you can maybe go and get a free transfer in a Jota, someone like that. There's a lot of players that are of that sort of ilk, younger players that are of that sort of ilk, that are coming up for contract extensions or contract expirations in the summer. And so maybe we'll have to have those conversations in January with a view to trying to sign them in the summer. And again, that comes down to planning. Was this season always supposed to be part of a rebuild, part of the process? And obviously expectations changed when we had the start to the season that we had, but the last 5 games have proven how vulnerable expectations are in the grand scheme of things. But I wouldn't hate the fact if Tottenham were to identify a world-class potential, a youngster with the potential to become world-class, and maybe arrange that deal for the summer, if that's in the best interest of Tottenham's future, rather than making a move and getting substandard players to fit holes that are here at the moment, but not necessarily the right options for the rest of the process. I want us to get this one right, and with the relatively limited budget in January that's available, and the prospect right now of European football being somewhat more distant than it was only a few months ago, or a few weeks ago, the revenues that would have come with that will obviously impact our abilities in the summer. So we're going to have options, but we have to be very wily and smart, sharp with our decision making in January. And one of these players that we've been linked with today, guys, the second player I want to talk to you about, is a name that worries me. And that is Everton's Ben Godfrey. I think he's 25 years old now. I think he cost Everton £20 million from Norwich a few years ago. He was once Everton's Young Player of the Year. He was once compared as the next Rio Ferdinand. And he had a lot of superlatives. I think he was, a few years ago when he was coming up, everyone had high hopes for him at Everton. Ultimately, he's had quite a few injuries since. I think he spent most of last season out with a broken leg. Since he's come back, he hasn't broken into Sean Dyche's team. I think he's only played one game for Sean Dyche's Everton. He seems to be surplus to requirements, and for me, I don't really think it's too difficult to work out why. The guy, for me, makes rash challenges. He has very little positional sense. For a big guy, he is terrible in the air. Absolutely terrible, in my opinion. And he's not a player that I think solves anything at Tottenham Hotspur at all. He's right-footed, which again isn't the priority. He can play, in a few positions across the back line. But again, if we're just looking at players because they are, versatile, then that's an issue. I think you need to include versatility as a bonus, but it shouldn't be the prerequisite for why you're looking at players. And for me, Ben Godfrey hasn't done it anywhere near enough. He started his career, he has a very, very strong early start to his career, but hasn't really kicked on. And I think he's been exposed a little bit for his vulnerabilities that he hasn't kind of ironed out in his game. And as I say, for me, if we sign him, I think it's the wrong signing. I think we're going in the wrong direction. Maybe you'll disagree. Let me know if you do like Ben Godfrey, if you think he's a player that we could work with or that Ange should get the best from, but I just don't think that we're moving in the right direction if we go after him. But that is where the transfer news, views and clues has gone today. The last thing I would say is there's also a lot of noise out saying, I think Football London have even said it now, saying that Tottenham's board have sanctioned adding Richarlison to the transfer list. I think people have given up on him a little bit or realised that he's not right for us, and if we're trying to sanction a big name striker in January or in the summer, whenever it comes around, then in order, a way to try to raise the funds to help in that regard is by selling, a couple of the players that do have residual value. Richarlison being one of them. I think that there will be people that are looking at him and will see value, whether that's Saudi Arabia or somewhere else in Europe or in the Premier League. I don't think we'll have any chance of getting anything like what we paid for him back. But I think you could find maybe £30-35 million would be an acceptable fee. And you know what? I would take it, add it to, whatever is available. As I say, I expect there to be about 60-70 million. I also would like to think that Tottenham will go back in and get that last £50 million from the £150 million war chest that was handed over at the start of last summer. People say, well, hasn't that already been taken? Didn't that go towards this or that? It didn't, because that money has to be announced. If it's being taken from a like an escrow account, which is where it currently is held, then it has to be announced, because it's technically will affect the amount of shares that are in issue, the valuation of the shares, the valuation of the club, all of those things. And so for the minority shareholders, they will need to know exactly how much has been taken from the 150, and thus far only 100 million has been taken. I know that there was initially an expiration on the 50 million, but in the January accounts, Daniel Levy did say under questioning that money was still there and the expiration had been extended. We haven't really heard anything more about it since, so I'm assuming maybe the club are hoping that everyone forgets about it. But for me, I think we absolutely need to take that, draw that down, offer it into the club's coffers, and to go again in January. I think that it's a really important thing that we balance out the demands for the immediate issues that we're facing with the long-term plan. I don't want to see us to spread and waste money and sign players on 4-year deals that turn out to be mistakes, turn out to be anchors on our progress for the next 4 years, like we have done in the previous 4 or 5 years. And so January being a tough market, you have to shake hands with, I guess, trusting the fact that you've got Scott Munn, that you have... Hello buddy, how you doing, Billy? You alright? Good to see you. Shake hands with the fact it's Billy Brown from Love Island fame. I didn't realise, I met him yesterday, I didn't realise we got a celebrity in the street. Goes and pulls all the birds. What was I going to say? Yeah, I think we have to shake hands and trust the fact that we've got some specialists in place now. We've got a team of specialists. You know, I don't know if Ange Postecoglou is still or very heavily involved in the identification process, but you know that Scott Munn will be, you know that Johan Langer will be, that Rob McKenzie will be, maybe Paratici, if he still is being consulted on the fact, he will be, and the chief scouts, they'll also be getting involved, and hopefully there's a data-driven approach that is cognizant of the variables that we're facing here, variables that include the difficulty of doing business in January, the need for, you know, to add a homegrown player in so that it makes, as I've said before, easier decisions around what to do in the future with other players that are currently still here, in no small part because of the homegrown issue. Players like Ryan Sessegnon, players like maybe Ben Davies and Ollie Skip, you know, bringing in a highly talented, useful utility player that happens to also add to the homegrown numbers will make decisions easier with the other three. Players like a Calvin Phillips, who's someone that I absolutely support as long as his weight isn't an issue. There is those rumours that he's put on a stone or two and he's just not in shape anymore. If those things are true, then it's one to avoid, but if they're not true, I think there's a player there. I've said this before, I remember him from his Leeds days when he was an absolute baller. I don't think you lose it in terms of talents. I think you might just lose it in terms of your desire, and let's hope that that's not the case. Obviously Lloyd Kelly is another name, but he's currently facing yet another injury, and one thing you don't want to do is sign players that come with injury baggage, you know. And that's what I was worried about with Dusan Vlahovic. To go 360 here, I heard last night during the live stream that we were doing that Vlahovic has picked up a serious injury over the last couple of days at Juve, and I couldn't find anything about it this morning when I was looking, but let me know if that's true. If that is, then that probably puts a nail in that coffin. For me though, guys, whilst I think that Vlahovic is a great option, you know my number one target is Santiago Jimenez, and I'm pretty sure that he just last night this morning beat the record of goals in a calendar year in the Dutch league that was set by, was it Luis Garcia? I'm not sure who it was, but the guy continues his upward trajectory. The problem is, I think that he will be not short of options, and despite Tottenham spending a hell of a long time observing him, sending scouts out to every single game, ever since Tottenham were looking at Arne Slot before we sacked Conte, we were sending scouts to watch him and noticed obviously Santiago Jimenez then, and I've been watching him closely ever since. I would imagine that Santiago Jimenez is the top target, but with his form improving and his scoring record continuing as well as it has done, you know, you end up imagining that the price target is not going to be £39 million. Why on God's green earth would Feyenoord set a price target like that? You know, it's going to be closer to 100 million. And again, does Tottenham have the money? Does Tottenham have the appetite for that? If Daniel Levy wants to go and do it and, you know, invest the money from underneath the carpet, underneath the mattress, then I'm on board it. But at the same time, I don't expect him to, and I think that we have to, you know, get on board the fact that that's the way the club wants to be run. It might not be music to everyone's ears, but I'm, I guess, more tolerant of it than a lot of people. But you hope with the amount of talent ID that we now have at Tottenham, that we can still go out there and find, you know, the best that's available for our system, that's within our budget. And I do think that we had the right team to be able to find that. Although in all likelihood, that probably leans us back in towards buying youth players that appear to have what we want, but we won't really know until they get here and until they mature, and there's risk that's associated with those. Most of the time though, when you go young, you have enough time on your side to be able to liquidate the asset if it doesn't work out. But that's it today, guys. Ben Godfrey and Dusan Vlahovic are the two names to come in. Not a fan of Godfrey at all. Vlahovic, as I say, second choice behind Jimenez, but still, if we're going to go there, I'd like that. I think it's a statement signing, but just unsure if he would want to come at the moment. And then the outbound links are Richarlison again. The Tottenham Hotspur board have said enough is enough. Sayonara. We'll see. Like, subscribe and comment, guys. And as always, bye-bye.